morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tara Usap Tayo.
This episode is in partnership with the Coffee Concept. No coffee maker? They gotcha. Taste the quality of Philippine coffee without using a coffee maker through a new drip coffee product brought to you by the Coffee Concept.
Brew instantly by adding hot water and enjoy the flavor of fresh roasted coffee. Perfect for your personal use. Bring it to the office, when traveling, or when you just feel like having good coffee. Perfect for your caffeine fix.
You can reach Coffee Concept through Miss Karen Salonga by dialing 0915-877-2089. Again, that's 0915-877-2089.
Or you can conveniently send them a message through Facebook. You just have to type Coffee Concept. Again, this is Randolph.
And this is JD.
And welcome to the episode 2 of Tara Usap Tayo. Now, so for this episode, we will be discussing the importance of competent education leaders in continuing quality education amidst COVID-19. So this topic is quite personal for JD and I because we have experienced some, we can say parang mga discrepancies in the system that is quite problematic, and we are just here to let you know what are what kung ano yung na-experience and na-experience namin, and what are the steps that educational leaders could consider in improving the system, the quality of education amidst COVID-19.
Again, we're just going to talk tonight about our experiences and also our recommendations and several recommendations we got from our viewers and
Listeners, more like listeners.
listeners. Yeah, listeners.
Okay, so JD, share your experience. Why is this topic so important for you?
So, the importance of competent education leaders in continuing quality education amidst COVID-19 is really needed. Of course, no, nabanggit natin last episode na education will continue, but it has to change. It has to improve, no? It has to adapt. And that is driven by the education leaders. So dapat ang education leaders ay ready to transform education. This is not just transforming education online. Hindi lang ito basta-basta paglipat ng mode of instruction online or migrating your lesson online, but migrating your curriculum in a new perspective or new way. And of course, kailangan doon ng education leaders with political will. Those education leaders who has a political will and will of hearing and listening to its stakeholders. Yung hindi niya angkinin yung, yung sarili niyang um, pananaw para lang ma-improve yung education, sarili niyang pananaw. Based on my personal experience, I am working at the higher education. No, I'm working at the academic institution, and there are education leaders that fails to reach their faculty members. Okay, not just this is not just to me, but also to other faculty members in other higher academic institutions, wherein the president fails to reach their constituents or fails to reach its stakeholders. And there's even a time wherein hindi alam ng faculty na may changes na pala, na may ganito na pala, no? And at this point in time, kailangan open tayo sa communications. Yun yung, I think, isa sa mahalagang meron dapat ang isang competent leader, that you're open for communication. And to the chairperson of the higher education, again, it would also be wise, yes, alam natin na ang mga higher academic institutions ay may kani-kaniyang academic freedom o kani-kaniyang autonomy, no? But then again, it would also be wise if the commission would initiate steps in improving and uniforming the best practices of other universities para ma-pattern ng mga universities na sumusunod. I mean, utilizing your power properly is also another um, characteristics of a competent leader. Yung alam mo kung paano mo gamitin yung kapangyarihan mo, alam mo kung paano, hindi lang kasi 'di ba Randolph, hindi lang naman sapat na mabait ka in order for you to become a competent and a good leader. You should be decisive. You should decide for the goodness of everyone. Ayun lang, kasi there are experiences wherein teachers are being left behind in the discussions. Kumbaga, nag-uusap-usap lang palagi ay management. But the school is forgetting that the frontliners of education are teachers. And di ba, dapat kasama si teacher sa development, implementation, and evaluation of anything that is happening inside the university or the
Yes.
school.
Yes.
Pero nakakaligtaan ito. Ito ay nagiging konsepto na lamang na naiiwan na lang sa Prof Ed. Pero sana ma-realize sa mga academic institutions na, and of course education leaders, that bago sila nakaakyat sa management, they were also once a teacher, a classroom teacher. 'Di ba? At yun yung sana ma-realize nila. Kasi there are people na nagsasuggest na pumasok na, pero hindi pa naman pala ready yung school.
Yes, totoo yun.
You get yung point na example, walang masyadong kaso sa akin kung papasok sa work. It's okay to go to work. I love going to work, no? Because I love working. But at least man lang, having a good working environment would really help. Lalo na sa panahon ngayon sa COVID-19. Having a competent leader in the context of education is really important in order to continue a quality education. Hindi ko alam sa DepEd, pero ang dami-daming nababalitaan ko, ang dami-daming modules na ginagawa sa inyo.
Well, sa perspective naman ng basic education under the department, we are also having problems in terms of management. But in the school-based management, even though, for example, the leader of the school-based management is the principal, right? Yung principal ang head. Even though your principal is competent or has the ability or has the perfect capacity to lead your institution, nagkakaroon ng problema kasi ang system ng DepEd ay parang unitary. The principal could not make major decisions on his or her assigned institution without the directives of the division office or the division level. Okay, and the division level could not also make certain decisive steps without the directives of the regional office. And the regional office could not also make decisive measures without the directives of the national office. And nang nagkakaproblema kasi sa amin, medyo nagja-jumble-jumble yung relay ng information. For example, may isang memo na pinalabas that all teachers should be let me rephrase that. Don't get me wrong. Like, they were given a alternative work arrangement wherein 50% of the teaching force would go to school for 2 weeks and then work from home for 2 weeks. And then the other 50% will also do the same. Parang batch 1, batch 2. And then on the first day, when that memo was effective, there was another memo na ni-release, which is contradicting the early memo, the previous memo. That memo that was released last Monday was all teachers should be working at home. So no physical reporting. So nagkakaroon ng contradiction within the department. Doon nagkakaproblema. So parang ang dumadating, ang nagiging dating ay parang tentative lahat. Kunwari, sinabihan kami ng ganito yung gagawin, yung directive from the division. We are scared. The school, the principal, the staff, the teachers are scared to take action because it might get changed in the latter. Parang lahat ng desisyon, lahat ng utos ay nakatentative. Kasi merong mayat maya lumalabas na iba na naman, which is very confusing for us. Okay? Very confusing for us. Kasi that directive, we follow the directives of the higher position. Okay? But if another memo is released by a higher officer, then we have to follow again. And it really wastes time and effort. Okay? It wastes time and effort, not only for the teachers, but the school principal and everyone in the department. And yun na nga yung uh, another problem that you have stated earlier, na hindi nakikita nung mga nasa taas yung situation ng mga nasa baba. 'Di ba? In every organizational structure, there are people who are at the top, of course, the management, and the workforce who are at the bottom. And they just keep on releasing different directives. You do this, you do that, you do this, you do that. Okay? But uh, they're not really taking into consideration what is happening
Yeah.
at those levels. Parang uh, I'm sorry to say, but it feels like uh, we are being neglected, okay, or our concerns are not being heard, okay, because yes, maybe I understand that some of their decisions are pinag-iisipan nila. Of course, we could they are considered experts in the educational field, so let's give them the benefit of the doubt that they are thinking about all the decisive measures that they are ordering us. But the problem is we could not generalize. Okay? One memo or one process uh, could could be applicable to other institutions, but it
Yes.
could not be applicable to others. So I think uh, instead of making generalized decisions, why not make, specialized decisions that would cater to the every need of uh, every public school here in the Philippines. Although I understand that would be very challenging kasi ang daming
Yeah.
school dito sa
But
Pilipinas.
ano, that will depend on the education leader of the institution of the school, 'di ba? Eh paano kung example sa inyo kasi you mentioned that your of course that there are principals that are really good. There are really education leaders that are really good, that are competent enough in making good decisions. But what about those education leaders that, no offense, but you know, um, lacks in decision making, 'di ba? If
Yes. I
you
think,
will give kasi
yeah.
yun yung naging yun naman yung nakita kong problem if you give the autonomy to the school,
Mhm.
yung situation ng higher educations, that you give the full autonomy. Right now there are higher education institutions that are really preparing very well and really going smoothly, but there are other higher education institutions that are struggling, na iniwan si teacher na bahala ka na sa gagawin mong online class, online platform, it's up to you. So I think um, maganda na merong centralized at decentralized decision making. Like there are decisions that pwedeng gawin ng school ninyo, and there are also decisions na pwedeng gawin ng central office. That's just my opinion on that case.
Yes, nakikita ko rin yun. And which is very problematic. For me parang napaka-problematic nung bahala na si teacher. Because I think, in my perspective or in my opinion, I think teach leaders should not tell the teachers that bahala na kayo sa mga estudyante niyo, ganyan, ganyan. Because as an institution, of course, there also needs to be a unified system, okay,
Mm-hmm.
for, for a smooth run. So since this is going to be a recommendation episode, let's start with our recommendation. Since we are workers who are at the bottom of the organizational structure, so we can see the perspective of our co-teachers who are, let's say, we are at the same level with. So,
Okay.
what recommendations or what can you comment or can you suggest that maybe some of our educational leaders who are listening that maybe they could consider?
Um, I think, uh, ito personal lang muna.
Okay.
I think it would be good to first recommend sa mga education leaders. Uh, Again, we are not, ano lang, clarify lang din to our listeners. We are not critiquing the
Yeah.
education leaders. We are just giving recommendations that hopefully, no, you could also recommend ganon, or you could also agree or disagree with our recommendations.
Yeah,
No, but
we're
these
not
are
forcing
our,
anyone to follow our recommendations. This is just our perspectives, and we base those recommendations on our perspectives, on our on-hand experiences. Okay.
my first recommendation to our education leaders is to first um, um, meet the stakeholders of your school. Meet the stakeholders of the school, meaning that those are the teachers, the parents, the students, and other representatives of the community if possible. Meet with them, consolidate with them, communicate with them, because that is very important right now. Communication. Communicate if is it possible to make or to do online education. If not, ask help from the community. Ask help from the local government units. Ano yung pwedeng gawin ng LGU for you? Provide tablet, provide stronger Wi-Fi. The LGUs are, I think, willing to help naman yung mga LGUs. They just need to be tapped kasi hindi din naman nila alam kung ano yung kailangan ng school. So yon, communicate with the stakeholders. Communicate with parents. Kumusta sila? Kumusta yung sitwasyon sa bahay? Communicate with students. Communicate with the community, no? Sa LGU, kung ano bang kaya nilang gawin to strengthen online education. And lastly, communicate with your teachers. Kung kaya pa ba ng teacher ninyo. Kung may laptop siya, oo. Kung yung laptop niya ba, kaya ba ng online class? Kung may printer ba siya sa bahay? Kung kailangan niya bang mag-print ng modules na ipapadala niya sa bata? Kung malakas ba yung wifi ni teacher? Kung kaya ba ni teacher? Kumusta yung location ni teacher? Hindi lahat ng teacher nakatira sa magandang bahay sa condo or what na kaya mag-cater ng online class. Communicate. So first recommendation, education leaders, communicate to all education leaders. To all stakeholders rather, na kaya nyong may communicate. Second, based on your gathered information sa communication na ginawa ninyo with the kasi I won't recommend you na kay na 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 si teacher makikipag-usap. Kayo po ang makipag-usap, ha? And second is reflect on the curriculum. This naman is for national or regional level. There will be changes of competencies needed. Hindi lang po ito tungkol sa paglagay ng competency sa isang pagko-congest ng mga competencies, pagpapaiksi ng mga competencies. But definitely, there will be competencies needed. There will be competencies na mababago. There will be competencies na maaalis. No? And I think it's high time to reflect on our curriculum in basic education and higher education. Yes, we are following global standards in education. We are following these. But I think it's also high time to contextualize further the curriculum basing on the gathered information sa community, sa teacher, sa student. Yun. Communicate and check your curriculum. And I think my third recommendation that um, I can do is, of course, create trainings, programs for education leaders and teachers. Hindi lang po sapat na puro webinar. Sa totoo lang ha, webinars are really helpful. They are really, really helpful given by the different organizations. But webinars are not enough. Teachers have to be trained. No, students also has to be trained sa itong papunta na tayo sa new normal. Kasi we are not, after the COVID-19, we are not going back to the original curriculum. We are going to a new curriculum, to a new mode of teaching and learning. Hindi na lang ito basta makapag turo nung existing content. But there will be changes in the curriculum. And of course, there are specialists, education leaders. There are specialists in your schools. Meron po dyan sa school ninyo na magaling sa curriculum development and planning. Meron po dyan sa school ninyo na magaling sa IT, na magaling sa technology. Meron po dyan sa school nyo na magaling sa science, sa English, sa language, sa modern communication. Meron po dyan magaling sa culture. Consult with them. Tap your experts. Higher education institutions, please communicate with your experts. Yung mga hinire yung faculty, hindi lang po yan taga-turo lang ng instructions. They have different roles. And I'm sure those higher education educators or basic education teachers has something in their mind na pwede nila maitulong sa inyo. Kasi baka nahihirapan na kayo mag-isip kung anong gagawin ninyo sa school, kung anong decision ang gagawin nyo. I'm sure these experts can help you. Your internal experts can help you. They will definitely help. Kasi if you love your school, teachers, tutulong at tutulong kami. Kaming mga teachers, nandito lang naman po kami. You just need to tap us. You just need to tell us kung ano pong kailangan ninyo. And we will do our best to help you. Yun lang naman po. Kasi you have to make us feel that we are part of this. Na hindi lang kami taga-sunod, taga-implement ng gusto nyong gawin namin.
Yes.
Okay? Kami mga teachers, nandito po kami para tumulong. We want to help in the development before we implement and evaluate. Hindi lang po kami implementor, ma'am, sir. We're also developers. So please tap us. Kausapin niyo po kami. Hindi po yung gumagawa kayo ng desisyon na hindi po kami nakukonsult. Kasi kahit po kami, mas lalo po kami mahihirapan. Please try to consult your faculty members, your students, your teacher, your community. So siguro yun lang masasabi ko based on my experiences that I hope by the way, another thing pala, please education leaders, do not treat COVID-19 lightly as if na pwede kang mag-continue ng business as usual pa rin. Do not treat COVID-19 lightly.
Yes.
Kung may nag-positive sa school niyo, please have some certain level of uh,
Empathy.
empathy or certain level of mas lalong pagiging
Concern.
vigilant,
Yes.
mas laging maging maingat
Yes.
rather than pushing all your staff and faculty na pumasok.
Yes.
And please, pag pinapasok niyo po sila, make sure may wifi po, may computer po na magagamit si teacher. Kasi there are times that papasok si teacher, magre-report doon, wala din naman pala siyang output na magagawa.
Yes.
Di
Totoo.
ba?
That's right.
And yon siguro, communicate, check your curriculum, make trainings for your teachers, and tap your internal experts. Um, Tapos, be concerned with your community or with your school. And lastly, trust your teachers.
Yes.
Please, trust us.
Yes.
Um, uh, Trust that we will do our best. Trust that we are agents of education.
Yes.
Ayun lang siguro. Dami ko na
And
nasabi.
I think I get where you're stemming from. Kasi I've read a report na I think the commission is planning to continue face-to-face.
Um, but ano naman, naglabas ng statement sa commission na um, nagkaroon lang ng miscommunication
Yeah. And
or misinterpretation. Pero, of course, as the commission, you should still be careful sa mga sasabihin mo.
yes, and I think aside from your recommendations, which is I think the basic education or the department concerned with the basic education could also consider your recommendation. As for me, uh, I I am more with I would really like to emphasize in the management perspective of the department. Uh, yes, the department is a centralized system. Everything is coming from the central office. Lahat ng utos sa kanila nanggagaling. But uh, I think it would be wise, or I think it would be uh, good if you also give some autonomy to the divisions. Because just like what I've said earlier, the directives of the central office are too general. Okay? And since it's general, we could not say nang applied siya sa lahat. Okay? There are some institutions where yung mga directives na inutos ng central office, even though it's for the general Department of Education, there are some institutions who are really having problems following such directives. And yes, it would be hard to tap division offices, separate institutions, because unlike CHED, there are a lot more institutions for basic ed than compared to higher education. So I think what I would recommend is there would be a mix of centralized management and autonomy management. I think that the central office or the department should give some power down to the uh, down to the organizational structure of the department, because only those who are at the bottom, who are at their respective institutions, or who are at their respective divisions, they are the only ones who could contextualize based on the situation that they're experiencing. Maybe uh, the central office could give guidelines. Okay, and when I say guidelines, these are not rigid step-by-step rules na kailangan sundan like step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. These are just guidelines, and the divisions could still deviate uh, so that they could contextualize, they could specify the things that they need with, of course, still following the guidelines of the central office. Because let's face it, the division could not function without the region, and the region could not function without the central office. So I think what the higher uh, people could do is just to set guidelines and let those who are at the bottom of the organizational structure to uh, what do you call this, to specify or to modify, rather to modify those set of guidelines that would cater to their need. Okay, kasi doon nagkakaproblema. Plus I think yung ano, yung pag-send ng information from central to division. I think another recommendation, I think the department should fix its way of communication because nagbabangga-bangga. And those uh, jams, those those pagbabangga-bangga, they cause confusion. And confusion would result to the time being wasted, not just the teacher's time, but the time of everyone working at the department. Okay, it would also waste their efforts. Okay, so saan ako nagagaling dito? It's because there was a directive that uh, the teachers are going to create modules. Okay, and then fine. Okay, so we get the point. Yes, we need to create modules because that would really help. That would really help us. Okay, for distance learning. And then another directive came a bit later that there are already modules created, and then we just have to execute those modules. We just have to create what we call exemplars. Okay, so the time of the teachers was wasted. The effort of the teachers was wasted. Although yes, uh, they say that those
It's
modules that the teachers made could still be used as Plan B. Uh, but I think the time could be spent with other things. Kasi hindi lang naman module yung pinagagagawa ni teacher. 'Di ba? Since
yes.
they're also fixing at this time of the year, since it's the start of the school year, teachers are also fixing their enrollments, especially yung mga grade 12 teachers kung saan hindi naman nagta-transfer out yung mga students. They're fixing their enrollments. They have to make sure that their class, their grade 11 class is enrolled, which is very hard kasi for example, 60 ang students mo, iisa-isahin mo yung 60 na yon, i-enroll. And with the communication that we have today, it's very hard to communicate to those students because uh, one, have not all of them has internet connection, so you can't really reach them online. You cannot reach all of your students online, and you cannot you cannot go to them personally because of the quarantine. And of course, our teachers, let's face it, some of our teachers are already middle-aged adults or older adults already. They're in their 40s, they're in their 50s, some are in their 60s, and they are really vulnerable. They're also scared for their health. So it's not wise for them to go to the child's house, right? So,
Yeah.
yun lang. So I think the time wasted could have been used to perform or to accomplish other tasks that are also important. Okay?
I totally agree with that, no. Um, it's just that ako yung napapaisip lang din, no, na sana as kasi right now I'm sure our education leaders ay nasa sitwasyon din na mahirap din yung sitwasyon nila.
Mhm. Yes,
Diba?
I
They are
understand
picking,
them. Yes, it's really hard. As
yes,
I'm really trying to be also empathetic with them. I'm also
yes,
putting my feet into their shoes. That it's not easy to
yes,
manage an institution. it's not easy to manage a whole department where there are different demands from different teachers, different divisions. Yes,
Yeah.
I understand that. But what we're trying to say is that maybe uh, try to consider, be a little bit more considerate, be a little bit more involved.
Yes, me too. I am actually hoping every time I always include our education leaders to have wisdom, and even our national leaders, to have wisdom in the decisions that they are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now, that's what they need.
Yes,
Prayers. Again, that's my personal. They need prayers in order to make sound and wise decisions
yes,
in this time. But then again, itong ginagawa po namin ni Randolph is just recommendations based on our experiences. And I hope some heads, section heads, department heads, or other education leaders could hear this, hearing our sentiments both from higher education and basic education teachers.
yes. Earlier this week, Monday, we posted something into our news feed and
Yeah.
Facebook. Okay, so we called out fellow educators, students, and uh, stakeholders on what could they recommend to educational leaders. Okay, so we would be reading one of the comments that is graciously been commented by one of the wise educators. I won't say what division. Okay, so this comment is from Facebook. Okay, so that educator said, education leaders should implement appropriate at suited learning modalities that is applicable to the current situation of every municipality or city. Do not generalize it, but rather find alternative ways and provide subsidy to the needed concerning the quality and quantity of education and the safety of teachers and learners. So what can you say about that comment?
Wow. Wow. Thank you for that wonderful comment. Sobrang powerful ng comment niya. Kasi on point. No, there are different situations in the province and in the cities, different situations based on different academic institutions, private or public. We have different needs. We have different situations. So that's a good call for our education leaders na to consider different situations in their every deliberations and not generalize what we really need. Although, no, I think one of the things that are generally needed by teachers is that to have a strong internet connection.
Yes, really.
Siguro yun yung one uniform. But more than that,
One uniform need of everyone, especially if they want to achieve distance learning.
yes.
Okay. So, yes, I actually agree with our commenter. This is what I've been discussing a while back. Uh, it's not, we cannot really generalize. The directives should not be generalized. Rather, it should be modified, or it should be special to the situation uh, of every division, of every city, of every municipality. Because yeah, that's right. Just like what you've said, uh, the needs of those schools that are in the city are different from those schools that are located in rural areas. Yeah, so we cannot
Yes.
really create a general directive because it would be really hard to follow for some schools.
Yes. That is true. No, that's actually wonderful wonderful recommendation.
Yes. Yeah. So, well, good job. That is a really, really heartfelt and really wonderful uh, recommendation from our commenter. Let's give him a hand.
Thank you po.
Okay, thank you for participating. Okay,
So there are three recommendations to support leaders during the coronavirus pandemic.
okay.
This is from
Yes,
Global Partnership for Education,
yes.
GPEC.
We've also no, not me. JD also searched for recommendations online, and this is what he found. Okay, share to us what you have found.
So ikaw naman, Randolph, ang mag-react dito.
Okay, sige.
No? So this three recommendations to support school leaders during the coronavirus pandemic. This was posted last May 4, 2020 by Samir Sampat, a global school leader, and Azad Omen, global school leaders. They are both global school leaders. I'm just going to read the recommendations and you react on it. Number one recommendation. First recommendation, clearly define the role of school leaders in the crisis response. Recommendation number two, enlist school leaders to lead process to reopen schools. There are different factors to consider: mental health and well-being, learning losses, loss of students and teachers, ensuring adequate supplies, scheduling, and other logistic challenges. And third recommendation is develop programs to train and connect school leaders. What do you think, Randolph?
Well, I think those three recommendations are gearing towards uh, giving a bit of power to different school heads. In my perspective, this is the principal, right?
Yes.
So I think this is really good to give these kinds of functions to the principals because from what I am seeing, the principal is also what you call this, also depending on the decision of again the higher ups, division office, the regional office. So this is what I was saying earlier, okay? Because the different school has different needs, and what better way to identify those needs is through the principal because they are essentially the leader of the school. Okay, so I think this is really good because it gives power to the principal because it could give them a little bit more uh, ability to move around the school and to manage the school on hand. Parang ang nangyayari, ang kakalabasan nito, mas nagiging hands-on si principal. Kasi unang-una, siya ang may alam ng kung ano ang nangyayari sa school itself. So tulad yun ng sinabi ko, yes, a centralized decision is also needed. But
Yes.
it could not be rigidly followed. Okay? Rather, if they want a centralized decision, those decisions should be a set of guidelines where principals could deviate a bit depending on what their school needs. Okay?
Yes.
Because I think that's also one of the problem that I've seen uh, at the department is that principals cannot be on hand, could not be hands-on. Even though, even if they want to, they could not be fully hands-on to the school because they're still following orders from the higher ups. But I think it would be very much efficient if we give that ability to the principal. We give the principal the ability to be more hands-on to the school. Kasi sila yung nakakaalam ng mga unang-una, yung mga daing ng mga teachers, yung problema ng school talaga. So,
Yes.
I think they need that ability to be more hands-on to the school. And kudos to those principals who are really trying their best to be hands-on, okay, or really trying their best uh, to make the system or to make life much easier, not just for the teachers, but for the students as well. So I salute you. I know what you're doing is not easy. It's very hard.
Yes.
It's very stressful. And I salute you for being really hands on your
Yes.
respective schools.
So right now, teachers and education leaders are, of course, encouraged to create links from different schools,
Mhm.
whether it be different schools from different country, schools within the country, different region, different department. Nagkikita-kita actually tayo sa webinars.
Yes.
There are webinars offered by different institutions wherein nagkikita-kita tayo and we share the same knowledge about the speaker, no? And the topic about that the speaker is talking about. So it's high time, no? Teachers, education leaders to strengthen these links, to create connections more than the more than the share more than the communications, but of course sharing our own expertise. Right now there are a lot of groups that are already sharing different modules, different powerpoints, different activities that are really helpful, and it really empowers teachers,
Yes.
no?
That's
I
right.
hope education leaders could see this, could
Yes.
see that their teachers are doing their best in order to improve themselves in the situation right now.
Yes.
Diba?
And I
So
also
tayo,
think those links that the teachers and other educational leaders are creating with other educators could really strengthen the quality of education. In our society today, lahat na nakiki-benchmark. Uso ang benchmarking. And
na lagi natin ginagawa dati.
na lagi nating ginagawa dati. But it's true. Everything that we are doing today in every organization, everything is benchmarked. And benchmarking is not a bad thing. It's like getting ideas from other people that could also benefit your institution. So I think those links are uh, are a roadway. It's a way for us to benchmark
Yes.
other ideas that we could implement in our respective schools. Maybe it
Yes.
won't work, but maybe it will. Okay, so we really can't say unless we try it. Okay, but it's better if we have a lot of ideas that we could try so that we could really para makita talaga natin kung ano yung nababagay. Kasi ang hirap din naman no, isang idea lang yung benchmark mo and then hindi pala siya akma. It's not
Yes.
appropriate. Okay, so it's really wonderful. It's really essential. We have a lot of ideas and then we just, parang eliminate what's not good and then accept what's good.
Yes. A competent education leader will not only want to survive this COVID-19. Hindi niya lang gugustuhin na mairaos ang taong ito, no? But a competent education leader will transform the education we had before into an education that is transformative and responsive to the situation right now. Kasi this might not be the only pandemic that we can face, that we face, di ba? That we
Yes.
would face. Madami pang pwedeng mangyari na hindi natin alam. Kaya kailangan natin ng mga competent education leaders in order to face this. And again, as we have mentioned, their position right now, is really difficult. Ang hirap ng mga desisyon na ginagawa nila. And the best we could do is to recommend. And also, please talk to us
Yes.
because we also have things in mind that we want to share.
So that's it. That's the end of the second episode of Tara Usap Tayo. Okay, so
Again, we want to thank the Coffee Concept in partnership with this episode.
Yes, would like to thank Coffee Concept. Thank you for partnering with us. And again, to the listeners, if you're interested, you could contact Miss Karen Salonga by dialing 0915-877-2089. Or you could just conveniently send them a message through Facebook, but just type Coffee Concept and you will see them.
Okay. Thank you.
So,
I hope not to our listeners. I hope you respond in this um, episode as well.
okay, so
We are looking forward to further recommendations.
yes, and we would also like to invite our listeners to maybe be more interactive with us. You could send us a message, or you could send a message in this podcast that is available on Anchor. You can send us a voicemail on what are your thoughts or what are your suggestions, and we would be very happy to listen and
Yeah.
follow. Okay, so thank you everyone. Good evening. Again, this is Tara Usap Tayo. See you again next week.
Thank you. God bless.
God bless everyone. Goodbye.